afternoon, maybe even good evening to our panelists and our participants of that session on territorial approach to climate action and resilience. We are very happy that you are going to join us here. Before we begin, please let me inform you that this meeting will be recorded, and I think you have given your consent for that already. I will be the moderator of this session, and I'm very honored to having this role. I have been working for many, many years for ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, at the end as Deputy Secretary General. For the last 3 years now, I am a free project expert and consultant, and I had the pleasure to work on exactly our theme, namely how the various levels of government can cooperate better for climate action. I could work on that in several projects in the last year. So I'm really looking forward to what I can learn more today. Already now, a big thank you to our panelists and of course to our participants. You have hopefully been listening to many of the last sessions of this great conference already. Here you see our panelists, and we will be introducing each of them just before they speak. Thank you very much for that slide, which gives us a wonderful overview. Just before we begin, please let me flag a few housekeeping matters, and I guess you have heard them already in other sessions as well. We are talking today in English only, so there is no interpretation, and all of our panelists will speak to you in English. We ask everybody to stay on mute, if not you speak, so that we have a very quiet environment. But you can use the chat function at any time, either if you have a technical issue to share, or of course, if you have a question which you would like to pose to the panelists, either you yourself, or we are going to summarize questions, and hopefully we will have some time to address these then to our panelists. So that was the housekeeping. Let's jump now into our issue, the territorial approach. And I would like to ask for the slides which I have prepared. Can we see the term territorial approach as a type of twin term to the sectorial approach? And we all know the sectorial approach, and we are discussing sectorial issues all the time when we discuss climate action and resilience. But the territorial approach has not been addressed so intensively in the past. And we are happy that OECD is now going to work on that also. So the territorial approach to climate action and resilience is our theme of today. And just to make some terminologies clear, under climate action, of course, we understand mitigation and adaptation. But what do we understand with resilience? I mean, you all know the term. We have worked intensively, for example, on resilient cities. So resilience normally is coping with stress and shocks, and ideally being even better built up after such stresses and shocks. Here, the term resilience is used in an additional meaning, and I'm very happy that Tadashi will explain that to us later. So it's also meant to discuss the resilience with or based or with the impacts of climate action. So I'm very hopeful that we are going to discuss that a little bit further later as well. The next, please. So this term territorial approach and the thinking behind that has been discussed from various angles in the last years. Some you use the term multi-level climate governance. I think that is very often used in the international debates. We also discuss vertical integration, and we have the term collaborative climate action. All basically means the same, namely that we address all levels of government, request them to rise their ambition in climate action, unfold their potentials, and in addition, we ask these governmental levels to cooperate very well with each other in order to be able to unfold this potential fully. The next, please, and the last. So my understanding of that theme, and let's see whether it's also yours in the next 1.5 hours, is that national governments, cities and municipalities, and when they exist, also the regions, are not necessarily to be seen in a hierarchical order when we discuss climate action, but as a group of actors. And each actor has particular responsibilities and roles often given by constitution. And these go along with particular opportunities, but often also with particular problems, or let's say shortfalls. And exactly to discuss how these levels can support each other more is what we certainly will address in the next 1.5 hours. So that was a super brief introduction, and I hope it helps you a little bit to see what is going to happen in that session. Now there is the pleasure to listen to Tadashi Matsumoto, who has been working at OECD for many years on these issues. And Tadashi, you are the host. You are the one who has brought this session together. So thank you very much for that. And you would give us a little appetizer at the very beginning why we are having that session. And you will then speak to us later again a little bit more in detail. So what role can the OECD play to support governments in their territorial approach?
Thank you, Monica, and welcome all the participants to this event. Do you see my screen now?
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. So OECD has just launched this program called A Territorial Approach to Climate Action and Resilience. And the purpose of this session, of course, is to discuss the accelerating climate action and resilience. But also, I'd like to also share with you about the information of this program, so that this program is still open to country governments, city government, and regional government. So we like to have as many participants as possible to this program. So this is an important piece of information. On territorial approach, as Monica already mentioned, this is basically to get away from a sectorial approach and looking at places and looking at integrated climate action across sectors, but also across different actors. There are two major criteria or justification on the importance why we need a territorial approach. The very first one is actually, as we all know, that cities are an important actor to climate action, but cities alone cannot achieve any climate goals. Same time, national government alone can also achieve the desired climate target, and both need to work together. So we work also very much closely with the Coalition for Urban Transition, and Nick may elaborate this point further later. But I like to really focus on one of the result of the report of the Urban Coalition for Urban Transition on urban opportunities. So the report says basically 1/3 of the climate CO2 emission reduction potential can be achieved by cities, but actually only a third. And for others, we really need a collaboration with other levels of government. Second reason why we are very much focusing on this territorial approach is to look at diversity or disparity across regions within the same country in terms of climate action potential, but also the impact. So this graph is just showing some data subnationally. Broke down the emission situation, and as we see, all we know that cities are emitting most greenhouse gas emissions, but actually on the right-hand side, if you look at per capita CO2 or GHG emissions, then the remote region has the highest number. And actually, so you need to really look at the different regions, different parts of the country differently, so that we can have a tailored and targeted policy approach. In terms of climate impact, as you see, so this is a global view in terms of the cooling needs. And the point here is that you really see that a diversity or diverse difference across within the same country about the impact. For example, in terms of cooling needs in the US, as you see, some parts of the countries has a lot of increase in the cooling needs, and in some parts are not so much. There's another graph showing that tree cover changes. And same picture here in Europe, as you see, also within the same country, you have a very different picture in terms of where you have gained more green or where you lose green. The point here is that any climate action to be effective, it really needs to be place-based. And then I like to close with this, to answering this Monica's point on resilience. So when we have a climate action, the impact also is very much different from place to places. So one example is the industrial transition. So that if you have, let's say, greening measures, some regions are more affected by this policy. Of course, you can get CO2 emission reduction positive impact, but to be able to do so, we need to do some, let's say, industrial transition, and then also some parts of the country may be impacted more heavily than other places. So in terms of this resilience, it's very important whenever you have a climate action, this action must be accompanied by a policy measures which mitigates some other negative impacts by this climate action. So it's really an importance of this integrating different policy instruments together to drive the transition to zero carbon economy, but also to minimize some impact, negative impact to other parts of the policy objective. So that's why resilience is used in this way to emphasize this point. Territorial approach, as you see in this is the final slide before passing back to Monica. As I already mentioned, geographical disparities is very much one of the largest challenges to achieve the Paris Agreement. And subnational governments are very ambitious, but actually, if they want to fully materialize their potential, they need support from the different levels of government. And then, as you see, the NDCs are, the governments are working hard, but still we know that we need to do more. And with this urgency, the territorial approach can really help, has a potential to accelerate the climate action. For that, the territorial approach can be a really important tool. So I stop here. Over to you, Monica.
Thank you very much, Tadashi. I think it is great again to hear that OECD is addressing these so relevant issues, and thank you that you have given us the most important arguments already as an introduction. You will be speaking more at the end and explain the program in more detail. Thank you. So the next part of our session is now dedicated to our panelists. Thank you very much again for coming. And we will start with Nick Godfrey. He is the director of the Coalition for Urban Transition, and previously he was a member of the executive team and head of policy and urban development for the new climate economy. You remember this, or you know this major international initiative to examine how countries can achieve economic growth while dealing with climate risks. So it's the message, it's not either or, it must go together. Nick, you have prepared us some findings from your latest research on the urban climate policies. And this is, of course, one of your specialities, your priority areas. So it would be great if you could explain to us briefly what the goals and the mandate of this coalition is, and what these latest findings are in regard to the climate cooperation of national and subnational governments. Please, Nick.
Thank you, Monica. Such a delight, such a privilege to be with you all. I hope you're all well. Without further ado, I'm going to share my my screen. Monica, please just let me know if it appears miraculously.
Wonderful, it's okay.
That's great. All right, wonderful. So I'm just going to talk for 7 or 8 minutes. And I'm just going to say something, as Monica mentioned, about our coalition, but I'm going to more fundamentally say something about how important it is that different levels of government work together to transform economies, to support shared prosperity and climate action. So, well, what is the Coalition for Urban Transitions? Well, we're a partnership of over 36 organizations, public, private, third sector, that have all come together to support national governments to transform cities for better economic and climate outcomes. So we very much complement the work of subnational actors and the city networks by working with national governments to help transform cities. We're co-managed by the World Resources Institute, the Ross Centre for Sustainable Cities, and C40. So I just want to start by saying something about what we see as the main challenges today facing national governments the world over. So in our view, national governments facing right now a major triple challenge. The challenge of post-COVID recovery, the challenge of connecting that to long-term development, and of course the challenge of climate change. And in our view, cities are right at the heart of working to help support national governments deal with those triple challenges. We know that cities are enormously important actors, and Tadashi mentioned this before, that the OECD program will play a big role in working with cities and other subnational actors. And we know that cities produce around 80% of global GDP, and well over half of the world's population already live in urban settlements, and that is projected to continue to grow. So the good news is that we know the pathway to zero carbon cities globally. This just shows some data that we put together, which basically looks at, is it possible, based on currently available technologies and practices, to get to net zero or close to net zero in all of the world's cities? And this graph here essentially demonstrates that, yes, it is possible to get to close to net zero in all of the world's cities by mid-century, based on major investments in transport, in the built environment, in material efficiency, in decarbonizing the electricity supply. So that's the good news. Based on the technologies that we have available today, all of the world's cities and urban areas can get to close to net zero. Yes, it will require new investment in the order of an additional 2% of global GDP year on year for the next 3 decades. But the even better news is that this investment will yield highly attractive economic returns. Based on our estimates, this would yield a $24 trillion global economic opportunity by mid-century based on direct energy and material cost savings alone. And this type of investment would support an enormous number of new jobs, 87 million in 2030, 45 million by mid-century. So the transition is possible. Yes, it requires new investment, but it would generate enormous economic returns, which would help not only support recovery, but also those other 2 goals I mentioned before in terms of long-term development and climate safety. We've looked at, as part of our research over the last year or so, as part of a major report for the COP26 presidency, we looked at how does this play out in the 6 big emerging economies of China, India, Indonesia, Brazil, Mexico, and South Africa. And it turns out a similar story unfolds, and the investments required are significant, but they would yield benefits that exceed their cost by over $12 trillion by mid-century across these 6 economies. And you can see a bit more the type of dividend that these investments would yield. So China getting to net zero in all its cities by mid-century as part of its long-term strategy would yield benefits that exceed their cost by $7.7 trillion and support over 15 million jobs in the next decade. So it's a good news story, theoretically, but we asked ourselves the question, well, okay, if you look at that big wedge graph that I showed you globally and what it's going to take to get to net zero in all of the world's cities, we asked ourselves the question, well, who needs to do what to seize the urban opportunity? And it turns out that local governments have an enormously important role to play. So if we look on the right-hand side of this graph, this shows, who essentially has primary authority to drive that type of transformation. And it turns out that local governments do have an important role if you exclude decarbonisation of the electricity grid. So they have around a third of the powers and responsibilities required to drive action. But it also demonstrates that actually national and other tiers of government have an equally important role to play. So around a third of the primary roles and responsibilities sit with national governments, and around a third requires action across all tiers of government, national, regional, and local level. Actually, if you include decarbonisation of electricity grids, the role of national or regional levels of government becomes enormously more important. And that's what you can see on the left-hand side of this graph here. So the message here is that local governments have an important role to play in driving a zero carbon transition globally, but national governments have to play their part as well and play a really important leadership role in working hand in hand with other tiers of government. I should say that building urban resilience is just as important as decarbonising cities. We can see the huge plethora of climate risks that are confronting us even today, in the increasing heat waves, extreme flooding, sea level rises, and more frequent incident of natural disasters. And that only will get worse over time, as has been well outlined by the IPCC in their latest contribution. So building urban resilience is as important as decarbonising cities. So just to really conclude, we have laid out a global call to action to national governments and local leaders, encouraging them to work together to affect and achieve shared prosperity at the same time as climate safety. So we've been calling on national leaders to develop overarching strategies to deliver shared prosperity and climate safety, and do so in a way which places cities right at the heart of that effort. Funding and financing urban infrastructure at scale, combining national and sub-sovereign financing sources is enormously important. And of course, including and supporting local climate action in cities through governance and fiscal reforms that empower local governments and facilitate collaboration is really important. And there's a number of other issues that are mentioned on this slide, which we don't have time to cover now. Equally, local leaders, we're encouraging them to work much more proactively with their national government counterparts in their efforts to support cities that are compact, connected, clean, and resilient, and to keep innovating. Local leadership can play such an important role in demonstrating what's possible in terms of climate action and informing national policy. I did just want to conclude by saying that we as the coalition have undertaken work on national urban strategies in more than 10 countries during the last 5 years of our work, with 4 major country programs led by local partners in Tanzania, Ghana, Mexico, and China. And I can say something more about that if we have time a little later. But we've learned a lot, 4 major lessons that I want to draw your attention to in terms of what we've learned from working with national governments and local leaders on urban transformation. The first thing is that we see a major gap in converting the urban development story into a macroeconomic story globally. So national leaders and political figures really need to be convinced that getting cities right is in their own interests and can help them meet their core economic, social, and yes, political objectives. So really connecting the spatial urban development story to how transforming cities might transform economies is so important. Second lesson we've learned is that fly in, fly out won't work in terms of the support from global initiatives and city networks. Cultivating local leadership and building local coalitions with national government for urban transformation is absolutely critical. And we spend a lot of time cultivating local leadership, working hand in hand with domestic institutions. Third lesson, the money matters. Urban development ministries and city local authorities are typically vastly under-resourced, so engaging ministries of finance is fundamental to policy reform and financing. And finally, outcomes and flexibility really matters. So let's not get fixated on the exact strategy and policy instrument to affect this change. In some countries, it's a national urban policy. In others, it's working to place cities right at the heart of national development strategies or sector strategies such as transport and energy. So embedding urban at the heart of the macroeconomic development story on an agenda that is embraced by multiple departments is what really matters here. I will leave it there, and thank you very much for your attention. Looking forward to the continued discussion. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much, Nick. Please allow me a super short question and give me a 2-sentence answer only. Your pathway is so logic and all the arguments are with you. Why this hesitation? Why is not happening much more?
Hi, Monica, can you hear me?
Yes. Did you get my question?
I didn't. Can you repeat it, please?
Oh, I wanted to ask, this pathway which you outlined is so logic, it's so clear, the arguments are with you. Why this hesitation around the globe? And can you answer in 2 sentences?
2 sentences. Well, I think we as a climate community have to do a hell of a better job at connecting the climate story to a broader vision of what a successful economy looks like. So no longer can the climate story remain in the environmental bucket. We have to be engaging with heads of state, finance ministers, and explaining how taking up action on climate actually can help galvanize and develop a new economic vision for the future. And I think it's a very attractive one. And I think laying out a compelling alternative to business as usual is just so important now. And I don't think that's been given enough attention globally. I can say something more about that later if it's interesting.
We need to address the right people, apparently. So we are very lucky that we now have 3 representatives of a national government as our next panelists. And I hope that you can embed partially a certain type of answer or using Nick's arguments in your presentation. The first is welcome to Carolina Urmeneta. You are the chief of the Climate Change Office of the Environmental Ministry of Chile, and you have this position for the last 3 years. And you also have relevant experience in disaster risk management. So, Carolina, as you are representing the Ministry of Environment in Chile, that's also responsible for climate policies, of course, leading these. How do you foster the territorial approach in Chile? How are local and regional governments involved in climate action in your country? And I would now add, how do you involve the other ministries to achieve such a broader development agenda? Please, Carolina.
Hello, thank you very much, and thanks for the invitation. Are you seeing my presentation?
Yes.
Great.
We're fine.
We have just 7 minutes, so I'm just going to explain you, like in big words, how are we making and how we are progressing in climate policy in Chile, of course, regarding territorial approach to climate action and resilience. What I think it's really important and what we have been working the last mainly 3 to 2 years is our climate change framework bill. This bill has a national goal, which is carbon neutrality and resilience by 2050 at the latest. And this is really important because we put this goal on a law, considering in fact what Tadashi and Nick was saying before. For Chile, for example, carbon neutrality cost an investment in regarding like $50 billion, but that will benefit Chile because we will have savings in order of $30 billion. So this is cost economic, okay? And this is good for Chile, and that is why we put this in this law, because it's an opportunity. And also this law contains the governance and the climate management instrument for adaptation, mitigation, capacity building, technology transfer, and finance instruments. It has also the monitoring, reporting, and verification system to guarantee fulfillment of the goals. And the good news is last Tuesday, 2 days ago, the bill was approved by the Senate, and now we are going to the lower chamber. So this is going on, and this is good news. And as you were asking, Monica, this bill is signed by 17 ministers. And we have also the housing and the urban planning minister here, okay? So they will have specific goals. But how does it work? It works considering that we have this big national goal. We have our NDC, which set for Chile national intermediate goals by 2030. And we are developing now, and we are going to present in COP26 our long-term strategy. And this instrument sets objectives and goals in sectoral levels, including, of course, the Housing and Urban Planning Ministry. After that, you have sectoral mitigations and adaptation plans, where you have cities. Sorry, this is in Spanish, but I think, of course, you understand. And we have here, and I put like this in a circle, subnational action plans at regional level. We have 16 regions in Chile, and we have local action plans at municipality level, and watershed or basin strategic plans, because in Chile we have a big issue regarding water, okay? And as you could see there in the red block, we have this monitoring, reporting, and verification system. But what are we doing? And we are making progress in this, okay? We are not just waiting to have this law. Of course, we understand that we are on climate emergency, and we need to go further on this. So we already have 16 regional climate change committees in each region of Chile. And here we have the regional authorities and also some technical authorities in order to take decisions. And for example, we have 4 pilot regional action plans on climate change in 4 regions, which is Atacama, O'Higgins, Los Ríos, and Los Lagos. These are the names of the regions. We have regional GHG inventories, and this is really important because in order to have good decision, and I totally agree with Nick, you need to have good information. Because, for example, in Chile, we said national, we are going to carbon neutrality. But we have 16 regions. Chile is a long country, as of course, I think you know. And we have some regions that emit GHG, and other regions in the south of Chile where we have the forest that captures GHG, okay? So it's not like in Chile you would say all the regions are going to be carbon neutral, because we already have negative regions in Chile because we have the forest, okay? And at difference of another countries where forest emits GHG, we have a forest that captures GHG. So you need to see the data, which is based in science, in order to take decisions, in order to put goals for the territories. Then we have our climate risk atlas, which present the risk of the impact of climate change for each commune of Chile. We have 345 communes or municipalities in Chile, and this atlas present the risk for 12 sectors like cities, people health, agriculture, energy, water, among other sectors. We have also, which is really important, and Nick was saying that before, we need to work with the local authorities and the local people. And for that, in the Environment Ministry, we have the environmental certification system. Today, we have more than 70% of the municipality in this system, and the goal is to have 90% of the municipalities in the high level score of this system, which considers climate governance, and local climate change action plans. So that is how you put municipalities also in this system, considering the data and considering the information in order to take good decision. What another thing we think is really important is the subnational financial instrument. Okay, Tadashi was saying that before. We need to work on this, and for that we are creating a new subnational financial group because we didn't have it. It's not like it's new and we have an old one. We didn't have this, and this is for the public sector in order to help municipalities and citizens to get finance, because as Nick was saying, we need money in order to do this action. And for example, in Chile, we put a goal, the President Piñera put as a goal to have a sustainable recovery, which consider at least that 30% of the public investment is to accelerate climate action. And on that, we have for the year 2021, $2.6 billion in investments, in public investment. This is just public because I'm representing a public sector. And this includes sustainable cities, clean transport, energy efficient, sustainable urban plant parks, and sustainable houses with insulation and renewable energy. That is like in 7 minutes what I could tell you about this. We encourage, of course, climate action from the territories because this is really important for the people and in order to have benefits and to consider climate change in all the designs and the decisions that we have made. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolina, for that very up-to-date information about Chile. Again, I have a super short question to you. You mentioned these local action plans in your graph. Is it mandatory to set up these plans, or is it mandatory that these plans implement the national goals, or both?
It is, when we have the law, it is mandatory both, that we need to have these local plans which depend on the municipalities, okay? The law says the municipality must have these plans according their capacities, okay? Because we cannot say all the municipalities to have it right now, okay? But we put, of course, we need to go on that. And that is the reason why for the from the public sector, we are putting all of these instruments in order to they have capacities to take decisions, okay? And of course, they need to have a good relation with national and sectoral goals.
Thank you very much. Maybe Nick will tell us later how many countries in the world do have started to work with mandatory local action plans. But I'm very happy that we are now talking with Ryuso Sugimoto, who is Director, International Cooperation and Sustainable Infrastructure at the Global Environment Bureau of the Ministry of the Environment in Japan. So you have a very long title. I'm very happy because I know that in Japan you have very similar instruments to ensure that the local governments act. And actually, your country was among the first countries with a climate protection law many years ago already. And in that law, you have exactly mandated and obliged certain type of cities to act on CO2 reduction and to make such plans. So maybe you can briefly explain us the situation in Japan and also give us some strong arguments why the Japanese government allocate such a relevant role to the local level and to the cities. Please, Ryusho.
Thank you very much. Okay.
We see you and we hear you.
Yeah, just now I am uploading my presentation.
Yeah, good.
Can you see
Yes.
the slides? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much for having me here today. I'm Ryuzo, the director. Basically, I'm working for the international cooperation, but today I'd like to explain about the Japanese status and also the Japanese model for the promotion of the local government's climate actions. Okay. As you know, the last October, Japan also committed carbon neutrality by 2050, and last April, we also announced a 46% reduction in 2030 compared with 2013 level, which is, as you see in the diagram, so it's fairly in line with carbon neutrality. So this is a big challenging for us. But ahead of the national government, 2019, already 4 cities has committed carbon neutrality by 2050, including Tokyo, Kyoto, Yokohama. And then after that, since 2019, there are so many local governments or prefecture level announced or committed the net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And currently, more than 460 local governments announced the carbon neutrality. Last October, when national government committed carbon neutrality by 2050, more than half of the prefecture level already committed. That is the kind of the motivations national government was also pushed by the local government's such ambitions. Currently, these local governments represent 112 million people, so it's represent 88% of Japanese populations. In addition to the other national government's commitment, local government itself, prefecture, regional level, and the municipal level, city, town level, many type of the cities and also prefectures already commit this carbon neutrality. To accelerate their actions, our national government established a council for local governments, national and local decarbonizations this last December. And then by this council, so we invited the local government's mayor and also the several stakeholders for discussions with not only the Ministry of the Environment, Japan, but also other ministries as well. And then after that, we announced, we formulated a regional decarbonization roadmap. This is at the third meeting on the last June. This one is this roadmap has 3 pillars of the in that as a contest. One is create a decarbonized area. We aim to develop the roadmap for 100 leading decarbonization area by 2025, because we need to develop the decarbonized area by 2030. More than the 100 leading area we try to develop by 2030, because the next decade is so important. Then that's kind of leading the area can be replicated to the other area, so-called decarbonized domino effect. That is the first one. And then at the council and also the interviewing or hearing, we see many kind of requests or demand from the local government. We see the 3 items need to try or share with the local government. Financing or fund is always a first priority, but other than that, we got many requests about the human resource, about the expert or capacity development of the local stakeholders, and the technical knowledge sharing about renewable energy potential or local economic analysis. Such kind of the information is quite important for sharing the stakeholders how they can develop the decarbonized visions and also the actual movement. And third one is the lifestyle innovations by visualizations. Some data show the if we see the inventory in Japan, a lot of the CO2 emission from the industry area or energy sector. But if we see from the consumption basis, more than 60% of the CO2 emission come from the citizens' choice. It means many other users. So citizens' choice or decision making is quite crucial for decarbonization. Then we try to develop several policies for visualization of the CO2 emission and CO2 reduction point, and also decarbonize ambassadors for awareness raising. This is kind of the supporting system for the local government. And as Monica mentioned, we developed, we have a Act for Climate Change. And then since 2006, we request the local government to develop the Local Government Action Plan, LGAP. This year, in April, we revised this act and then request more contents for this local governments. Originally, prefecture or regional level, we request everything, and also the designated city level. So it's the certain level of the cities also need the same request for developing the local government action plan. This time we expand the local government action plan to add the target for the implementation of the measures and also the criteria for setting up the promotion area of the renewable energy and also the decarbonizations in that planning. That's one. And also this type, we also set some certification system by the municipalities for the private sectors. This is the third one, introduction of the certification system for regional decarbonization promotion project. Business operators also can be certified by the municipalities to support the decarbonization in the local area. The merit of the certification is a one-stop service application for related permission and also all other procedures and a special exemption of the EIA or something. So to help the this kind of the framework can help the smooth consensus building in the regions for decarbonization and also promote the decarbonization initiative that utilize the renewable energies in the regions and solve the regional issues at the same time. Because basically renewable energy is fine, but if in some local area, some renewable energy also some demerit for the local citizens. So such unless we develop some consensus in the regions, we cannot introduce renewable energy as much as possible. This case, I'd like to share the case of the Odawara cities. These Odawara cities developed support to develop the Shonan Power, this local power producer and suppliers. This is kind of the local power company led by the local governments and also the citizens for the renewable energies. Recently, this power company started car sharing services with the local government with the EV and also the renewable energies. This is not only for the decarbonizations, but originally we use a gasoline car, then we import the gasoline, and then we pay the money to the other than the local areas. But by the renewable energy and EV, our cost is becoming the investment in the local regions. So that's and then it's also job creation by the local PPS. And also this services provide a new way of the transportation in addition to the public transportations, because aging society and also the depopulation is quite critical in the Japanese local area. So not only the decarbonization, so we can make a kind of synergies in such issues. We have to make such kind of synergy or pursue for the SDGs. Our ambition
are you coming to an end, Ryuzo? Sorry.
Yes, just 1 or 2 slides, sorry. Our such kind of example is not limited in Japan. We can share to the other overseas cities. Currently, we support a program for city-to-city collaborations with 41 cities joining. So then some examples, for example, to Kuala Lumpur City also announced zero carbon by 2050 by the support of the Tokyo Metropolitan. We can share and also the technology knowledge transfer to other countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have learned a lot about Japan, and I hope that many colleagues from other national governments can listen to that and can draw their conclusions out of your efforts and achievements. Let's stay in Asia and let's ask Mrs. Jing Kin to speak to us. She is the chief engineer and works at the China Center for Urban Development, a national institution working with and for Chinese local governments and closely with the National Development and Reform Commission. So we would like to ask you to speak to us about this current situation in China, and it's apparently a very relevant time for China. The 14th five-year plan has been presented with some ambitious goals, and you are, as many other countries, are in the middle of the COVID recovery. So how does the Chinese national government view the economic and social opportunities which Chinese cities represent? And how is it taken action to seize these opportunities, of course, with the priority on climate action? Please, Jing, go ahead.
Okay. Because my daily work is not climate change itself, but more focused on regional and cities planning. So maybe my opinion is not that professional in climate change. Okay. So firstly, the overall feature of China's economic and social development in the new area is to shift from the stage of high-speed growth to the stage of high-quality development. The theme of economic and social development during the 14th five-year period is to promote high-quality development overall. This is a scientific judgment made by the 19th CPC Central Committee. For the climate change, as we all know, in September 2020, at the 75th UN General Assembly, President Xi Jinping made solemn promise to the international community. China strives to achieve the peak of carbon dioxide emissions before 2030 and to achieve carbon neutralization by 2060. So the Chinese government attaches great importance to giving full play to the enthusiasm and creativity of cities in implementing the climate action goals. Since 2010, the National Government Development and Reform Commission has successfully launched 3 batches of 87 low-carbon cities. On the whole, the pilot policy of low-carbon cities has played an important and positive role in reducing carbon emissions intensity and promoting technological innovation. Carbon peak carbon neutralization is a main keynote of China's economic and social development in the 14th five-year and the next period. Low carbon city construction will continue to play a leading role. First, the policy framework of carbon peak is gradually clarified, and low carbon cities will continue to play a leading role under hard constraints. In this context, the relevant central ministries and commissions have clearly required all localities to formulate and issue carbon peak action plans suitable for the region. The Ministry of Ecological Environment says that the effect of carbon peak work progress will be included in the Central Environmental Protection Supervision, which means that all localities will study, formulate, and strictly implement the timetable and roadmap of carbon peak. And second, the policy support for carbon peak has been continually improved, and low carbon cities have ensured in the window period of green transformation strategy. And third, after exploring and summarizing the low carbon pilot policy, its beneficial concept is expected to spread further. The policy pilot generally includes 2 stages of pilot first and a point to phase. The process of policy pilot diffusion is essentially the process of a policy innovation and diffusion in China. At present, the 3 batches of low carbon city pilot work have followed this policy logic. The significance of the pilot is to try out problems, solve problems, and accumulate experience. According to the evaluation results of the previous 3 batches of pilot cities, they have achieved energy conservation and emission reduction, clarified the context of policy implementation, and explored problems such as goal setting and power conversion. The pilot of low carbon cities and the double carbon goal will become a powerful policy tool, and the accumulated experience will also provide useful reference for other cities. But overall, we should also be clear that there are also some problems in the implementation of China's climate change strategy. The first is the absence of laws and regulations need to be further made up. The regulations on the administration of carbon emission trading, which supports the concentration and operation of the carbon market, has not been officially promulgated. The lack of laws not only affects the effectiveness of policy making, but also affects the in-depth promotion of China's response to climate change. The second is the policy coordination. Coordination needs to be further strengthened. At present, China is working.
Jane?
Hello.
Jane, sorry,
yeah.
I'm hearing some other voices in your presentation.
Okay. I will be close to the iPhone. Okay. The second is the policy coordination needs to be further strengthened, and finally, is social support needs to be further consolidated. And the final is a degree of internationalization needs to be further improved. As you can see, because they find me urban planner for this meeting, because there are few research about the carbon peak, carbon neutralization in China. So actually, we have not so many experience in this research as the experts in Chile, in Japan. So we're also in the beginning of trying to making more explorations in this field. And this is my knowledge of this field in China. And I'm glad to have this opportunity to have a talk with all your experts. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Jing. It was great to hear from China. And I'm very sure that in the discussion, there will be some more opportunities to dive deeper in some issues. Before we have this discussion, I'm very delighted to say that we are not talking only about cities, but with cities. And we have a very relevant representative of the local level of cities. And this is Agnes Schönfelder from the city of Mannheim in the south of Germany. Agnes, you are the managing director of the Climate Action Agency, and you had the Climate Change Strategy Office at the mayor. So, and you work with a lot of international city associations. So Mannheim has set up this issue in a very strategic way, as we all know. I hope that you can give us now a few examples on what Mannheim is doing in the context of its regional and national framework conditions. Please, Agnes, go ahead.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Monica. I will share my slide before you start.
All okay, we hear you and we see your slide.
Fine. Oh no. Now, okay. Yes, local action is really important because climate laws and national governments strategies are the frameworks for us as cities, but that is not the solution for our problems and the real life place in cities and regions. So there are the challenges, but not only the climate challenge, also the social challenges or the economical challenges. So we have to think it all together, and we have the power in the cities to solve the problems. And we cannot wait for another climate law or a strategy. We have to be faster, even faster than a climate law, because 2050 is, as we know from the IPC scientists, is too late for climate neutrality. So we have to bring together all the power of the stakeholders to make real actions. And that brings us to my third position you didn't mention, that is the spokesperson of the local Green Deal Mannheim. So as you see on my first slide, it's going about accelerated and integrated action at the local level. And so we know already that dinosaurs also, so they still had time, but we know now we haven't enough time and they have to accelerate. That is a poster from the Friday's Future generation. And we had the emergency call in worldwide for climate action in 2019. But it's not enough to follow a call and to do another action or to do another strategy or a plan, because a plan is still a plan and nothing will happen if you do not have the solution or the urban governance, innovative urban governance to solve the problem. So that brings us to the local Green Deal. So we have the global challenges of climate change, and we have to meet also the local challenges in the cities. So to be not only climate neutral, but also to have a sustainable city with integrated targets and inclusive. So to leave no one behind and to leave no place behind. And that is the message, the Mannheim message, which came last year from the Sustainable Cities and Towns Conference, based on the European Green Deal, the new growth strategy, which is which goes with less wasting resources. So growing, yes, but not avoiding all the not wasting all the resources, and that's a new thing. And to bring it to action, so that what deal says we have to act, not to plan so much, and to be really faster. So we have the international and European policies and the action plans and the national policies. That's fine. That's a supporting framework for us as the cities. But we have also the local problem situations, and we have the local competence for the solutions. We are the land user. We have the public transport. We have the energy production and so on. So, but for all these, we need a local strategy, a local structure, and a local culture. We have it from our mission statement, Mannheim 2030. So we localized all the 17 sustainable development goals on the local level. And there are our strategic goals. But now we need something, a new governance approach to come to faster local action, to implement these local strategies, to be a sustainable, climate neutral and inclusive city. And that's a challenge. So for that, we need real local action, and we need the local stakeholders. And how does it go? So you see on the left side the 8 action fields of the EU Green Deal, and that is also the action fields of the local Green Deal. So it goes about not to think in the sectoral, only climate, only adaptation, only biodiversity, only food, only mobility, only buildings, and so on, but to think it all together and to come to an integrated target and to integrated action on each target and to think it together. But it goes always together with the right side. So to mobilize the urban society for action and to have the just transition mindset in your strategy. So the common good and just transition, to leave no one behind. And to have the knowledge transfer in your city, innovation and research. That is extremely important that we think it together, because if you have an action on the left side, maybe for housing, it has to be affordable housing and have to be without energy, higher energy prices and so on. So if you take action on the left side, you have to think about the right side. And there are a lot of actions from the bottom up and stakeholders from the right side we have to use in our networks. There are social economy actors that can help. We have NGOs, we have initiatives and organizations and they want to be part of the just transition mindset. So we started to set up a local Green Deal in Mannheim. We are a pilot city, and the first deal is that our city council is agreed to be a pilot city and to have actions in all these 8 action fields plus these 3 comprehensive fields. And we started to approve all our projects, what we do in the city. Hundreds of projects, and proved it if they fit to the action fields, if they fit to the ambitious goal. And the first decision and the first target goal of the city of Mannheim is we want to be climate neutral, first big deal, by 2030. And that means the next big deal that we have to switch with our hard coal power plant. So we have to close it by 2030 or nearly 2030. And we are in an industrial area. We have to decarbonize the heat system, the heat district system, and so on. So it's for us like moving mountains to Mannheim. As you see on the top, that is Mannheim in the Rhine-Neckar region on the river Neckar here. And we move mountains, so that's like the picture below. There is no mountain normally in Mannheim, but we want to move with a Green Deal. We want to move the mountains. We know we cannot move the mountains, but we can move people. And that's the sense of a local Green Deal, to have real concrete action. You see the picture of the right side. So with our NGO, the Climate Action Agency, we are doing a lot of actions, and we have a lot of big deals at the moment running through the local Green Deal. It is a really innovative urban governance approach. It is extremely too short in 7 minutes to explain, but you can follow us on our website on the local Green Deal Mannheim. Thank you very much, Monica.
Thank you very much, Agnes. That was great. I understand that you are pioneering these local Green Deals, and that you are hoping that many will follow you. As a German,
I cannot see you at the hear you at the moment.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Is it no better?
Yes, now.
So, thank you. You mentioned that you are pioneering these local Green Deals, and that you hope that many will follow you. This is great, and I hope that you will have many followers. Of course, as a municipality in your constitutional context, you have a lot of responsibilities. You mentioned electricity production and so on, which others are lacking. So apparently Mannheim is also a good example that the more responsibilities are on the local level, the more they can be used and let's say, go into such local Green Deals activities. Would you, just super short, would you define the local Green Deal as a call or as a program or as a body, or how would you, let's say, define it in one sentence?
It is action. It is a real commitment to a real ambitious goal for climate neutrality, to think it's sustainable and integrated. So it's a process and it's a concrete deal.
A process and a framework, apparently, for action to come and to fill all that. Yeah, let's see how many local Green Deals we will have in half a year, in 1 year. I mean, we need them urgently. So thank you very much for that input of the panelists. We have now around 15 minutes for discussion. And I would encourage participants to write this in the chat if they have questions. But of course, I also have many. And until other people start to tell us theirs, I would actually like to continue with Agnes, because we are discussing that cooperation between the governmental levels. You mentioned the EU having given you the example of a Green Deal. So actually there is one more governmental level. But let's talk about the regions, because we often talk about national governments and locals, but there are the regional governments in between. In some countries, they do have a relevance. What state policies are there to help you and to support you, and which type of regional government level framework conditions does a city such as Mannheim needs to be able to pioneer? Just give us a paar very concrete examples, please.
Yes. Yes, we are a city in a federal state, Baden-Württemberg, and so Baden-Württemberg has a new climate law that helps us, supports us with funding for personal stuff. That's really important to have somebody who can take the action, and with planning, money for planning now for the heat planning in the city. And so they give the framework also that all commercial buildings, for example, has to be built with solar panels. So that is a really concrete example how the federal state law helps the city to reach the energy efficiency goals and the durable goals. But sometimes they are hindering because some land use planning and regulations are going over the desk of the regional government, and so we cannot take action so fast as we want to. So it has both sides of the medal.
So sometimes regulations are supportive and pushing, and sometimes they are hindering. And I think this is exactly a very interesting issue, which I also want to address to Nick. In all your research on the national urban policies, you certainly have met, and today we saw some examples of mandatory rules for the local level or for the subnational level. So if we would combine two different types of strategies, the one would be a type of top-down strategy. So the national government sets goals, and the local level or the subnational level is there to implement these. Sometimes we hope for that. As just Agnes said, sometimes it's good to have such clear lines of command. The other strategy would be to see all these governmental actors and levels as acting as best as they can, be innovative, which sometimes leads to the fact that, for example, local governments are much more innovative and more ambitious than national governments and don't want to be hindered. So, Nick, my question to you, in your research, what did you find out between these types of strategies, and what is your recommendation?
Thanks, Monica. Well, I mean, it's a combination of both, isn't it? I mean, in the end, I agree with you. I mean, local leadership can be tremendously important. I also agree that it can be very innovative. And indeed, there's many local authorities with mayoral leadership that are, really demonstrating and pushing at the boundaries in terms of what's possible. Indeed, we see many cities, administrations well ahead of national government counterparts committing to net zero. Actually a number of cities by 2030. So, I think, somewhere between 500 and 700 cities globally have made that commitment. And they do so in recognition of the experimental and innovative nature of some of what they're able to do. And I think there is quite a lot of evidence that the efforts of major cities can, in terms of implementing policies within their own jurisdictions and within their powers, particularly in transport, for example, can really inspire and help shape national policy. So I think, empowering, and encouraging local leadership is really, really important. I don't think any national government should dissuade that leadership. And indeed, it really helps promote healthy collaboration and also competition as well, in a race to the top. At the same time, national government leadership remains tremendously important, and it strikes me it's going to be very difficult for local authorities to do certain things within their powers. They don't have the scale of the fiscus. They don't have powers in certain areas, such as building efficiency standards, which typically are set at the national level. And so I think it's really both, Monica. I think we have to push on both. They're not one is better than the other. We have to push on both, and we have to connect the two.
That's certainly the challenge, to find models to well connect the two and not to come to a situation where one strategy would exclude the other, because we have in our research in Germany seen that there is potentially the risk that if every level is encouraged to do whatever they want, say it in that way, also some levels go out of their responsibilities. But on the other side, if you make everything mandatory on a type of minimum level, then often those who would like to advance, such as Mannheim, feel to be hindered. So we need a very smart combination and a very smart combination of all that. Yeah. We do not yet have a question from the participants, but of course I have many more. No, there is one. Let me see. There's a very long one just coming up. Dominika Babici. You have a question, or is it just a comment? I think you are more commenting and everybody can read. So I would like to ask the representatives of a national government, and also, of course, Agnes, you can join. I'm looking for good examples for national climate dialogue mechanisms. Mechanisms where these different levels of government come together. Could be, for example, the setup of the NDC. So can you give us examples of such dialogue mechanisms? I think we got one from Japan already. Are they defined by law? Are they part of a climate law? Is it purely voluntary that these levels meet in your countries? Is one inviting the others? How does it really work? And maybe we start with Chile.
Thank you, Monica. And as you were speaking before, and as Nick told us, I think the question is good, and is and we need to understand that we need to work in the both sides. We need to have laws and good guides for local governments in order to then take decisions. But of course, we need to encourage them to take their actions by their own. And what has been working really good for us also is that we are going for this law, of course, and we are working on that. But also we are presidency of COP25, and we have the Champion, for example, campaign. And there we have Race to Zero that I think Nick was telling before. And we have, like in global way, 800 of cities commit to carbon neutrality. And in Chile, what is happened is that we have new cities that are going to this goal. And this is really important because it's the mayors that are coming to the government in order to say, okay, we want to be carbon neutral and we want to be in Race to Zero. What we need to do? And we said, okay, this is information that we have. This is what you need to know, and please go on, because this will be set by law. But right now you could go on that, because it is not like you are going only by law or you are going only on this way. I think it's both things, because we need to advance, and that is the main thing. But that is how we are working. And I think what also is really important is that when you made a public policy, like a central public policy, you make the mayors and the citizens participant on this. because they understand how this works, because it's not easy. You need a big transformation in order to go to carbon neutrality and to resilience. And for that, you need to understand what is going on at central level and what is going on local level. And that is, I think, the big issue that we are trying to do in Chile.
Thank you. Actually, Carolina, you mentioned citizens. Thank you for that. And here fits the question from Dominica. She asked, how important is citizens' control, ownership, and participation in climate action? Maybe we address that question to Ryuzo. So to share your view from your country with us.
Yes, thank you very much. In the presentation, as I mentioned, yes, citizens is critical because citizens is person, the stakeholder of the choice of the goods and services. Just now today, I didn't include that slide, but in some our inventory analysis, more than 60% of the GHG emission come from the citizens. It means through the goods and the services, including public transportation or some others as well. So if citizens change the behavior and also the choice, then the CO2 emission reduction critically change. Then the local government can affect on them. So for awareness raising, of course, we as a national government try as much as possible, but if we ask the citizens to change the behavior or change the actions, local government is a key stakeholders for them. So that's why we would like to collaborate with the local government, not only just their own responsibility, but as a kind of the important stakeholder for them. And also for the relationship, I think we'd like to echo the Chile's policies. We can develop and also provide a tool and framework for the local governments. And then they have their own characters and conditions, can develop their own strategy for the decarbonizations. Of course, we are happy very support to them for how to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess, Agnes, you are confirming that and can add your experiences?
Yeah, it's a perfect question for me as a CEO of the Climate Action Agency and as a spokesperson for the local Green Deal, that because yes, we need the real deals, and it helps to make the contribution from the citizens, to make it visible, to make it relevant to the strategies of a city. So local Green Deals can be really fasten the transition and make people to take them in the middle, because a local Green Deal is the highest level of participation. It is the ownership of the action. So you give them the role of a partner in a contract to make an action. So if we are successful in seeing that citizens see the transformation not with a fear, but to see what they win and not what they lose, that is the real way to involve all the citizens.
Thank you, Agnes. And a very short question to Ching now here. When you look into the situation of Chinese cities, are they happily taking up the impulses from the national government? Are Chinese cities going beyond national standards? Or how is that relation, and what can we learn from China on that issue?
Actually, the China central government is trying to make some action plan for the carbon peak by 2030, but until now, the central government have not really launched the action plan. But for the ministries, so for the central, also the central government, so all ministry levels, the Ministry of Ecological Environment, the National Development or Reform Commission, and the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Industry of Information Technology, it's central. They already launched a few policies to for the low carbon and for the carbon peak, carbon neutralization, a lot of policies, and the key provinces and cities, they have their own action plan. They have already implemented their own action plan. Actually, the first regulation in China is from Tianjin province. The regulation for the carbon neutralization regulation is from Tianjin province, but actually Chinese central government have not launched, but they forced. But the central government forced the ministries and the key provinces and cities to try their own how to say their own way of the action plan, and they forced the key industries to promote the carbon peaking and the carbon neutralization. So the central government actually now they already set the goal, overall goal for the 2030, 2060, but actually they indeed lack the laws and regulations for this field. So next step, so central government will make the 2030 carbon action plan for the overall the Chinese actions, the China actions. So the different levels of Chinese governments, they have not systemized. They have not so systemized as for the UN, as the US. But now the central government and the different levels of government approaching the how to say the policy, the different levels of policies. So I think, in my opinion, the Chinese government will have to learn as a more international experience, and learn from the policies and learn from the regulations and the laws, how to make in the next step.
Thank you very much, Jing, and I hope that this event has helped a little bit for that.
Okay.
So there are participants who are interested in learning more about these decarbonized areas, but we have no time now to go into details. Please consider if you would like to write your email address in the chat so that people could address you bilaterally, because I think there is a lot what you could then share with those who are interested in more details. Thank you for that, of course, very brief exchange. I have promised you that we are going to learn more from Tadashi about this OECD program, which is actually exactly continuing what we are discussing here. So Tadashi, please tell us a little bit more. Maybe you even market that countries and regions can join. And yeah, what shall we take with us from here?
Sure, thanks, Monica. So I try to really combine the outcome of discussion with the program, how OECD program can support this and going forward, this discussion. So the very first point I really liked from the different presentation is that there are some frameworks about the dialogues between national and regional and local government. And then also some challenges are also pointed out, like some inconsistencies. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it hinders. So I really like to stress the importance of this creating this dialogue. Japan already had one round of this forum, but it's very important that to continue to understand, for example, the needs coming from the local government. Also to understand what areas of national policies can be further developed or can be corrected in a sense that that will help more of the local government. And that's why this OECD program, one of the important elements of the program is to create a national and local platform, meaning that OECD will facilitate the dialogue between national and local government. We can create a in-country, consultation workshop or programs, forums where we can openly discuss this sort of national and local challenges or needs, or we could also create some sort of bilateral discussions so that we can make a more Chatham House rule discussion between national and local government, so that we can reflect it into the policy. The second important area I felt from the discussion is, yes, what are the data that national government has in terms of territorial, proceeding the territorial approach. I know that, yes, more than 700 cities and regions are committing the carbon neutrality. We need more, of course, but also we need some mechanisms that the national governments can understand the disparity of the government, not only the top regions and cities, but all the cities and regions within the country, so that government can provide an important and tailored support to different places. So what we are proposing in the OECD program is to create a sort of benchmark framework that the national government can use to understand the local conditions. And this can be also combined. We are talking about what sort of regulatory framework is needed. And yes, of course, mandating plans and action plans, that's one important piece. But I also think the importance to create a reporting mandate or reporting mechanism, which many countries has already do. But important that national government inform. This is the information we like to know from regions and cities to better construct a national policy, and please give that information. Yeah. So we are trying to help by developing a sort of benchmark or set of framework for monitoring. That includes actually the tracking of subnational climate finance, so that the local, how local public investment is used or public expenditure is directed to climate areas. Now we don't really have a comprehensive or internationally comparable ways to understand this. So we try to also include it in the program. And then finally, a policy action. So we, hearing from this discussion, I also see some gap how actually urban planning or urban or territorial development strategy can be really mainstreamed. Excuse me, I think I said wrong. So how climate policies should be or can be mainstreamed within territorial or urban development strategies. Because I heard a lot of the development of climate action plans, but to me, really the key is that the local government or regional government has their own development planning, which is more sort of traditionally linked with development and investment. So this plan really needs to be considering and integrating the climate action within that, of course, in line with this climate action plan. So we try not to create another sectoral action plan on climate, but this needs to be really an integrated plan, which is really linked with this territorial development. So that's another area that the OECD can look at. So how this integrated policy framework can be developed in participating countries. So this program, again, I really like to thank Japan to be the first participant of this program. Already Japan has expressed their commitment, and we really like to have at least 4 to 6 OECD countries to participate, and then also extra great to have regions and cities to be a part of this program, so that we can directly also hear from cities and regions to develop this program. So that is, hopefully that gives a bit of a sense of what we are trying to do. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Tadashi. Great, and also again, thank you for having organized that session within that so key and relevant conference. Unfortunately, we are already at the end of our session. I think now we would like to start discussing more details and taking up some arguments of our panelists. But before we conclude, I would like to ask the panelists, and I know that this is not easy, but to conclude their views in one sentence, maximum two. So what is your key statement on the territorial approach and the climate cooperation of governments, which you would like to see in the proceedings of this conference? So what key message would you have, which we would certainly then pass to the organizers, and hopefully it would come up in their further work? Let us just go along the order as we got your input. So Carolina, what is your key statement?
Okay, thank you, and thanks for this great talk. And I think what is the key for us is that we need collaboration. We know it is not just we have one solution, and what is big thing is that we need to make cost-effective decisions, and for that we need science-based information and good evaluations in economic and benefits regarding the decisions. I think that is the main issue with it.
Thank you. You managed to make a long sentence and to bring in the rod. Ayuso, what is your final statement?
Thank you very much. So I think, yes, different cities and regions has a different pathway for decarbonization. So multi-level collaborations with national government and local government to make such kind of a synergy for the realizing that pathway. That's our message. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jing.
Okay. In my opinion, besides the establishment of common goals, the consensus, and the laws and the regulations and the policy framework, the effective design of laws, regulations, and policy framework will be the key critical factors.
Thank you, Jing. So Nick, you gave us your introduction and you helped us to enter this subject also from a research point of view. What is your summary, or what is your main message?
Thanks, Monica. I liked the provocation from Agnes on the dinosaurs. You know, the reality is that there's no jobs or livelihoods on a dead planet. We're out of time. We have to act, and all levels of government have a role to play. I guess my statement, Monica, would be national government should empower and enable local governments to act, playing a critical role in raising ambition and experimenting, but also as critical implementers of national policy.
Thank you very much, Nick. Of course, you know that my ICLEI heart has been happy to hear that. Thank you very much to all the panelists. Again, thank you to Tadashi and his colleagues, particularly Keisuke, who have organized that and helped us to run it so smoothly. I'm sorry to say, but we are at the end. I wish you a good day, a good morning, a good night, and hope that we will convene and that we are all continue to work on that territorial approach, hopefully in an OECD framework. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Monica. Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.